Here we're using measurements of the CPI to determine rates of inflation. You can see here a graph showcasing the inflation rate over a period of time from 1995 to 2010. You can see each of these years at points A, B, C, and D. We'd like to ask ourselves and to identify on this graph where we experience zero inflation, an increasing rate of inflation, disinflation, and deflation. So let's start by working with part A, where we have zero inflation. That's what we want to know. So zero inflation would be the point at which price levels are not increasing. So based upon this graph, it looks as though we'd want to find where the CPI has remained constant, and that appears to exist between points B and C, right? That appears to be fairly level, so we could probably conclude that we had zero inflation from points B to point C. Now, how about where we experience an increasing rate of inflation? So this is when inflation is increasing really, really fast, where we could see our CPI also increasing really, really fast. And it's probably going to be from point 0 all the way to point A, right? Because right in there, you can see that it almost has the shape, it's like an exponential increase. So it's continually getting higher and higher from time 0 to time A. Now, how about disinflation? Now, disinflation is really just this time period we're experiencing a slowdown in inflation. So inflation is still occurring, it's just at a lesser rate. So here we could probably see that from A to B, right? Because it's not increasing at quite the rate from 0 to A. So it's slowed down a little bit, but we're still definitely seeing an increase in inflation. So we can conclude that we're seeing disinflation from point A to point B. And now how about deflation? Deflation now is when we're seeing negative inflation. When inflation is not increasing, it's rather decreasing. And that one's pretty obvious as between point C and D, because you can see that our graph is now sloping downward. So between point C and D, we have deflation. So as you can see, determining inflation based upon the graph of the CPI, you really just need to look at the slopes of each of these time periods, and that'll give you a good idea of what our rate of inflation is.